Hello, second years. Good to see you. Okay, today we're going to be going a little bit further into our data analysis. When we left off in the classroom, we were looking at data and asking questions of different people in the classroom. If you remember, like, oh, what's your favorite type of fruit? And then you would make your tally charts, and then we can organize that into that information, that data into a graph. And we looked at pictographs and bar graphs. And so hopefully you maybe have come across that. I've assigned that as suggested work in IXL. You may want to check that out to kind of just practice so we don't forget. So that's why I wanted to kind of go a little bit further today so we could have some review of what that data information and then learn about a new graph. So I know it's always fun to like talk and ask people questions and gather that information to make our charts. And if you want to do that, I know that we're not in school right now, so it's not as accessible to go around the classroom and ask questions, but you can always take a survey on your family members, call your grandparents, call your friends. You can get creative if you want to ask a question and if you want to make your own line plot of the information on your own as like a challenge. Power to you. And of course you can make a bar graph or a pictograph to represent that data as well. So today we're looking at line plots. And a line plot is a way to organize data, just like any graph. And line plots are used to see how often a certain number occurs in data. It's really easy to see how often, the frequency that something occurs. When we look at our regular bar graphs, we can look and see how tall it is and the number it corresponds to, and then we know like, oh, well, 7 people thought that pizza was the best thing for lunch. So again, it's giving the same information, but the graphs are used to kind of like highlight different aspects of it. And so we're going to use X's to show the frequency or the number of times somebody likes something rather than using pictures or drawing a bar. So you'll see here our first example. Our first example here, I'll read that for us. It says, Mr. Sun's students marked their ages on a tally chart. They made a line plot using the data. So just like our class, we've got some 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds and some 9-year-olds. At the beginning of the year, we have some 6-year-olds. So their class did that. And you can see that there were 3 7-year-olds. So we go over here to, they haven't labeled this, but this is the age of the students. And here we have 7-year-olds. And you can see they've already started to mark that lightly. So we have 3 students who are 7, 5 students who are 8. So we'll make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 X's for 8. And then there were 2 students who were 9. So 2 X's for 9. And that's it. The line plot for ages and Mr. Sun's class is finished. We see that there weren't any students who were between the ages of 1 and 6. And of course, no infants or babies in the class. And there wasn't anybody who was 10. So we'll do another example together. This one just is some random tally chart of, we don't know what exactly the information is for. Oh, we have pets. The number of pets. How many people had 1 pet, 2, 3, or 4 pets? So it looks like 2 people had 1 pet. So we go over here to, oh, sorry, I'm looking at this. Okay. So I'm going to make 2 X's for 1 pet. There were 3 people who had 2 pets. So I have 3 tally marks here for 2 pets. So I'm going to make 3 X's above 2. 1, 2, 3. 2 tally marks for 3 pets. 1, 2. And 1 person had 4 pets. So 1 X for the 4. And then we're finished. And that's it for that line plot. Okay? And our final example for this We're looking at sisters. So there were 2 people who had 0 sisters. 3 people had 1 sister. 1, 2, 3. There wasn't anybody who had 2 sisters, so we're going to skip 2, and there was 1 person who had 3 sisters. So just pay attention to that. So we skipped our 2 and we went over to 3 sisters. And nobody had more than 3 sisters, so we're finished. So that's how simple it is to make a line plot. So there will be some follow-up work that will go, it'll look very similar to this. So you can complete that, or you can just draw it on a separate sheet of paper. You can draw, you see it's just above a number line. We make a number line, and then you mark however many X's there are. Easy peasy. It's actually a lot simpler than making a bar graph or a pictograph. Oops. Yeah, I'm using the back of a whiteboard, and this wasn't erased from the classroom. The naked mole rat uses its teeth to dig. Exciting. Okay, so I'm going to have to get something and really scrub that because I discovered that and it's been sitting for a while. Okay, so the other part of this lesson is analyzing line plots. So now we're going to take our information and answer some questions about it. So our guided practice, they have already made our line plot. It says you can use data from a line plot to answer questions. Yes, you can. This says the line plot shows the number of students in each class at a school. So there were 3 classes that had 20 students, 4 classes had 21 students, and only 1 class had 22 students. So it asks, how many students are in most of the classes? Well, most of the classes had 21, because this is showing which one had the most. So 21 students. Okay. Now down here it says use the data from the line plot to again answer the questions. So here we're using this line plot down here, and it looks like number of hats. So either 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hats. How many students have 2 hats? Well, we're just going to go over to here's 2 hats, and we're going to count our X's. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 students had 2 hats. How many students have just 1 hat? Here's 1 hat. 1, 2, 3. How many students have 3 hats? Well, let's go over to 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. How many students have more than 2 hats? So this is going to take a little bit of computation. We want to know how many students had more than 2 hats. So that means how many students had either 3, 4, or 5 hats. So that means we're going to need to count the total number for 3, 4, and 5. So sometimes based on what kind of line plot it is, sometimes it's helpful to just write the number above the frequency. So if you want to do that, there's 3 who have 1 hat. We said that there were 6 who had 2 hats. There were 4 who had 3 hats. 2 have 4 hats, and 1 have 5 hats. So now we can just add our 3, 4, and 5 hats. So we can add 4 plus 2 plus 1 students. And that will give us 7. So 7 students have 2 or more hats. You see how we do that? Okay. So if you want to think about how are line plots the same or different than bar graphs or picture graphs, we've kind of talked about that. We talked about how they're the same. It's a way of organizing data. And then how is it different? We talked about one of the ways it's different is the line plots are X's above a number line. So we only have this one line here. Whereas if you remember our graphs, we also had this, whoops, we have an X and Y axis going up that will show how many for a bar or pictograph. Okay, but that's for something different. Okay, so, yep. Remember, if it asks you how many more, like let's say there was a question of how many more people had 2 hats than 5 hats. Well, there were 6 people who have 2 hats, and only 1 person has 5 hats. And how many more we remember we're subtracting. We're comparing it. So there would be 5 more students who had 2 hats than 5 hats. So that's just reminding you of that. If it asks you how many more, you're subtracting. Yep, I think that's what. So you'll have 3 pages. 3 pages of follow-up work. I'm going to give you some word problems on here. Where you're either just creating the line plot like we did here, or you're looking at the line plot and you're answering questions like, which one was the most, which one is the least, how many more, how many students had 2 and 3 hats, then you're going to add. If it asks you and, you're adding, just like here. How many students have more than 2 hats? We had to add 3 different add-ins. 3, 4, and 5 hats, there was 4, 2, and 1 students. Okay, so we had to add all those to get the answer. All right, let me know if you have questions. I will post the follow-up work in both Google Classroom and Seesaw, because I know there's been a little bit of difficulty accessing the documents. And I will assign on IXL some line plot work. Again, make sure if you haven't been practicing your bar graph and pictograph work, go back and practice that stuff. So I've been giving the suggestion of, 30 minutes a day of IXL. You can spend 15 minutes doing something that I've assigned, and then maybe you can do 15 minutes choosing something. So enjoy, and I will see you later.